Hey guys, Matt here. So, I haven't watched Smallville yet. I had to work tonight. However, it is taped. So, I came home. I haven't even changed yet. I'm going to go watch it and then do my review. I first wanted to give you guys my final thoughts before I watch it. Now, at work tonight, Smallville was all I could think about. It's really what got me through tonight. So, if you haven't seen my previous videos on how I would end Smallville in my thoughts videos, watch it, because I'm hoping that I'm right in how they end the show, or they deliver as far as Darkseid goes, because this season has really been lacking of, the villain. And I didn't want this season to be like, I think, Season 5, where they mentioned the villain, they almost showed the villain, but they didn't, and they waited all season to really show us the villain, and when they finally did, that was the cliffhanger for the season. So, I want this finale, like the first hour, could be wrapping up this storyline, wrapping up all the loose ends, showing us Darkseid, having the grand battle that really needs to, totally wipe out their budget. They have to have the awesome special effects, bring in all the rest of the Justice League movies, and let's have Justice League members, and let's have an awesome battle in Smallville to remember. I really don't want them to end Smallville a lot like they ended the series Angel, where there was a big epic battle about to happen, but that's how they ended the show. That's how they ended the episode. They cut it off, on with the credits. Now, with the second hour, what I'd really like them to do is, I would like them to make this finale a good series finale. I want them to pay more attention to ending the show rather than this particular season. They can take the first hour and, wrap up the Darkseid storyline, but take this second hour, take your time, take the second hour and, if not, bring back and show Martha and Lana and Pete and Chloe and Lex and Lionel and Jonathan, then, give a nod to them, give a remembrance, make the characters mention past characters, because without those guys, Smallville wouldn't be Smallville. So, if you're not going to have a flashback of the founding members of Smallville, mention them. Say, hey Clark, we sure have come a long way in our journey, because I want them to remember where they started. I don't want them to just end this season, finishing up season 10. I want them to end the season to make way for the future, for Superman that we all know. So, there are my thoughts. Wow, so nervous. Well, I'm excited too, so I'm anxious. So, there's that. I'll talk to you guys in a little bit with my review. See ya. Hey guys, Matt here. So, this is my Smallville Season 10 finale review. Before I get started, there's a couple things I want to apologize for. One, that if you see any bugs flying around, my house isn't filthy. It's just down here in Florida, the love bugs are ridiculous. So apologize for that. In case one flies on the camera, I'll get it. Two, if I use words like wow and epic and awesome and good and great, it's because the finale was just that. And I also apologize for if I get emotional, because this finale was everything that I wanted it to be. So I apologize in advance. You can call it dumb, you can call it silly if I get emotional, but you know what I call it? I call it pride. And that's what I have in Smallville, and that's what I've had for the past 10 years. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, we start off the finale 7 years in the future. Chloe is reading a bedtime story in the form of a comic book to a young boy. And I thought this idea was cool, because a lot of movies start out this way, where you have a main character telling a story or reading a story to somebody that actually happened to them. So they're, in actuality, remembering back or reflecting back on an event that happened to them. So I thought this was good. But then the camera does a long shot of the bedroom, and that's when we see in the foreground a toy bow and arrow set with a quiver. And then I was thinking, no, Smallville, don't do this. Don't start off the finale like this. And then the credits roll, opening credits. Starts out with Clark and Lois. Lois is frantically trying to get everything together that she would need to call off the wedding, and Clark is preventing her as best he can. And then Lois finally says, Clark, look, I don't want to be in your way. And the first cute Clovis moment of the episode happens when Clark looks at her and says, Lois, you're not in my way. You're by my side. And then we cut to Chloe and Oliver at the wedding chapel, setting everything up for the wedding. There, Oliver shows Chloe the 2 rings that Clark and Lois will exchange when they do their vows. Then we go to Tess, who's at the ruins of the Luthor Mansion, trying to find any clues and information she can about the darkness that's coming and how to defeat Darkseid and whatnot. And there, she is visited by somebody unexpected, Granny Goodness. And there, Granny Goodness has a chat with Tess a lot like the Emperor and Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, where Granny Goodness says, join us, join the dark side, and you'll be spared from all the torment and the pain that everyone here on Earth is going to have to experience. And then Tess, valiantly says, I will never join you. And then when she asks Granny Goodness, when is the darkness coming? Granny Goodness looks at her and replies, oh, my dear child, it's not coming. It's already upon us. So now we go to the Kent farm, where we see Martha Kent arriving home and seeing everything in boxes. Everything's packed away. And she walks over to one of the boxes and picks out a picture frame. And she looks at this picture of her and Jonathan. And when she looks at it, she sees the reflection of Jonathan Kent. And that's when I thought, wow. Okay, we're either going to see small glimpses of Jonathan Kent, or we're going to see a whole bunch of him. And I'm glad it was the latter. And then Clark comes home, and Martha says, when I told you to move ahead, I didn't mean to forget about everything that came before. And Clark's like, no, that's what you meant. He misunderstood. And Martha then says something really nice. She says that you don't have to forget your past to move on. And Clark basically says that's what I have to do. And it's really nice because when Clark leaves, they show the ghost of Jonathan Kent with tears in his eyes because he's disappointed with his son's decision. And then we go to the Daily Planet, where Chloe's trying to convince Lois to actually go through with the wedding and reconsider. And Lois is really stubborn, and then Chloe gives her Clark's written wedding vows. And when she reads these vows, they play this slow, sweet music that they, I think, used before in Smallville. I'm not sure. If they did, let me know what episode, because I'm pretty sure I've heard it before. And after she reads the vows, she looks up and realizes, I'm such an idiot. So then we get Tess arriving at Watchtower, and she goes to access all the databases and the computers and whatnot. And while she's doing it, Watchtower system says that Martian Manhunter has established a Watchtower space station, which is really cool, especially for future Justice League events, that take place either on the satellite or on the moon base of Watchtower. And so she can't access any of the files because they've been shut down. And so she accesses the security cameras, and she sees a possessed Oliver sabotaging the systems. So she rushes to go warn the others about Apocalypse and Oliver and everything else. And then Oliver returns to where Granny Goodness, Desaad, and the possessed guy, I don't remember if he's a author, radio DJ, or public speaker, but the guy that's been possessed ever since season 10 pretty much started. He's still possessed for some reason, so I'm calling him possessed guy. He goes to where they're meeting up, and they give Oliver a gold kryptonite ring to give to Clark, thus taking away his powers and letting them move in. So then we see Clark at Jonathan Kent's grave, where he's talking to Jonathan because he's, you know, still unsure what to do. And I really love how throughout the show you have Jonathan and Martha giving Clark advice, and then you have Clark saying, I know what I need to do, and going out and doing it, but it not working. And then him, you know, going back to his parents for advice. I really like that. And this is another scene where Clark was sure he knew what to do, but it wasn't working out in his favor. So then he basically says to Jonathan, I can't keep leaning on you and Jor-El. I need to stand alone. And I like this scene because Clark is looking down at the grave talking to it, while Jonathan Kent's ghost is looking at Clark. And I really like this scene because it made me flash back to all the moments with Tom Welling and John Schneider. And to me, never is there such emotion as in the scenes with them two, because, you know, you always get Tom Welling unsure of himself, and you get Jonathan walking up, you know, doing the putting his hand on Clark's neck or shoulder, you know Clark, and then giving him the wise advice. And it's just really, really cool and special. And then we see Oliver come along, he tries to comfort Clark and whatnot, and then Clark decides he's gonna let go of Lois. So he returns to the loft where Lois is in her wedding dress. She now wants to go through with the wedding, and Clark that now doesn't want to. And so in order to convince him otherwise, Lois gives Clark her vows. And it was neat because her vows had, you know, punctuation errors and editing marks and things crossed out and corrected. You know, classic Lois. So Clark reads it, and as he's reading it, the camera does a really beautiful shot of rotating from the hallway to the loft. The hallway to the loft, showing both of their reactions as he's reading it. And it was really, really well done. And so Clark says, the wedding's back on, I'll see you at the chapel. So then Tess is rushing to Smallville to warn the others, and while she does, she's leaving a message on her phone. She gets cut off by these black SUV FBI looking guys. And just when that happened, I thought it's either going to be the government or one of the Luthers. So then we go to the chapel, and we're at the chapel, and something that I thought about that I want to bring up. When we first see the different sides of the chapel, we see respectively the family members, friends, humans, I guess, and then we see, I think, on the other side, the heroes. And there's two heroes that stuck out to me, if they are heroes, specifically. One is, before Martha Kent is seated, we see this lengthy, blonde guy with kind of like a mohawk, with this woman with dark hair sitting next to him. And maybe it's just me, but I thought this character was supposed to be Elongated Man and his wife Sue. And then the guy that seats Martha Kent, for some reason I thought was supposed to be Connor Kent. I could be wrong, but if you guys recognize any other familiar faces or should be familiar faces, let me know. So then everyone's in the chapel. Oliver with the gold kryptonite ring hidden. Lois shows up, and when she gets to the front of the aisleway, she looks and she doesn't see Clark, and she starts to worry. And then we see her hand clasped by another hand, and it's Clark's, right there by her side. And then he walks her down the aisle because her dad is busy. And I was like, okay, another close moment that's nicely done. So they get to the aisleway, and as they're walking up, there's an empty seat next to Martha. But when Clark looks up as he passes Martha, he sees his father. And, you know, this is when I teared up, because I was like, wow, that is so cool. And I'm really glad that they did that.